Well, hello everyone, I'm Tim and welcome to Throttle Power. In this video we're going to build this walking tank. Okay, we got some decals, looks like just some numbers. I'm not sure what else is that. Yeah, instructions. It's going to show the sprues. It's 8 steps. Here's some more. Looks like a pretty simple kit to build up. Let's see what's inside the bags. Okay. It looks nice. It's pretty basic. Looks like that's the barrel, 2 halves. I'm not sure what all that is. That might be the hardest part of the kit, are these halves. Looks pretty neat. Looks like some bullets or something. Alright, what else we got? Looks like we're getting to the leg assembly here. I think these 2 sprues are identical. Looks like part of the turret. And one more bag. Looks like some pretty decent detail for such a small scale kit. It's a 1/72, keep in mind, and that looks pretty nice. Some screening, looks pretty nice, not bad. There's that again. It's like some cables. Cables look pretty nice. Alright, let's get to building this thing. We got the barrel halves glued together, working on this gun. And the gun's pretty complex. It's a lot more complex than I thought it would be, and I'm not really sure how much of that's going to show, because once the gun's built, it's sitting inside this piece. It's like right there. So with those halves drying, we are starting on the upper hull. We got those pieces in, and we got the lower hull going on. This is all the lower hull right here, and we're also working on this bottom turret. he is right here. I think what I'm going to do is probably cut these two little gun barrels off and replace them with aluminum tubing. The barrels are so tiny that I cannot drill in there and make it hollow. And since this is all sci-fi anyway, I can replace that with a little bit of aluminum tubing that's obviously open on the ends. It might add a little bit more reality to it. And keep in mind this is a 72nd scale, that's why it's so small. So that's where we're at on that. We started cutting off some leg pieces. We're getting ready to start on all the legs. Got some aluminum tubing I'm going to go with. It's small. I'm not really sure what size it is, but it's just small enough to go in right there. So the best way to cut aluminum tubing is to roll it, and I'll show you what I mean by that. First I get my length. It's going to be about right there. Put my knife right there and just roll. Just like that. Cut the other one to size. And just roll. I'm taking the edge of the knife blade, touching the aluminum, and just rolling back and forth. Just like that. Gives it a nice clean cut. And then what I'll do is my two ends, I will open them up more, make it more realistic. So just a little tip on cutting aluminum tubing. Okay, what we're going to do is we are going to open up that gun barrel. I just did one, and I don't know if you can see the difference or not when I hold them up to the camera. The one on the left is the one I opened up, and the way you open those up after you've cut it is you take a knife blade, stick it in a hole, and spin it. And that's how you open it up. You can do that on any size of aluminum tubing. And she's open. Okay, just like that, we've got aluminum barrels. I hate to close up the inside of these legs. These things are really nice and detailed. Heads up on this piece. That needs shaved off just a hair, and the reason why is it won't allow that to close. So what we're doing is just taking some real sharp snips and just clipping just a hair off of each side. And if you're not comfortable doing that, you can just take a sander and just sand just a little bit off of each side like that. And then it should fit in there tightly. Okay, we got the legs done. Those were pretty intense. There was a lot of parts on these things. Getting all this together and then having to bring everything in and get the pins into the holes. They turned out pretty good. The only thing left is to set it in the pad, which is right there, which isn't nothing. I may just leave the pad off so I can weather them easier. And then the next step after this is your shield, and your shield's gonna go on here like this. And it'll just sit on there. And on these shields, what I might do is maybe add some bolt detail or rivet detail on these shields. They're pretty plain. So we'll see what I get into and do. Decided to put a bolt detail on these. As you can see, it's pretty plain without it now. It's going to look pretty cool. The bolts I'm going with are called Teachy Train bolts, and they come on little trees like that. You get about 90 to a package, and I think there's about 12 on each tree. They're pretty cool. I'll have to show you guys what Teachy Train bolts are next time I go to the hobby shop. That's where I pick them up at. Little update on where we're at. Ended up finishing up the gun. I didn't build it 100% the way the instructions had, for the simple reason this little piece right here, which is about the size of a hair, was broken 3 spots on the tree, and that's the only thing that's been broke on this whole entire kit. So I was pretty happy with that. And it obviously holds one of the shell casings. I was a little upset at first about it. Tried fixing it, couldn't get it fixed because again it was in 3 whole pieces, and it just wasn't working out. So what I ended up doing is not adding it, because I don't really think it's going to show. When this piece slides on, that's all back in here, and it's not even going to show. So I ended up making a bad thing out of a good thing, and all the extra shell casings that come with it I'm going to use on a future project, which will be pretty cool. So that ended up working out pretty good. Here's the bottom turret gun. He looks pretty good with the aluminum barrels. I thought it turned out really nice. And speaking of the bottom turret, the only fit issue I've had, besides on the legs that we covered before, is when this back panel went on, it was gapped pretty bad. I did a lot of sanding and we still had some gaps, so what I ended up doing is taking some 20 thousandths round rod, cutting it, putting it in, and then doing a little weld seam. And I'm going to show how to do weld seams on a video coming up soon. That's something that's pretty easy to do, and you can do it with rod, you can do it with putty. There's a couple ways you can do weld seams. So I've got that gap filled in with some rod, and then kind of did a weld. And it's hard to see on camera because again this thing is 1/72 scale. Something else I've done is I've left the exhaust off because it's going to be easier to add the exhaust coming out weathered versus having it in there and trying to weather it. So he'll get added later. Top hull is basically done. Well, that's the bottom. That's the top hull. So it's basically done. And then of course the legs. And on the legs, although this here gap got taken in nice, there was still a nice little, kind of like a where the two pieces come together, the line there that was disappearing after sanding it. So what I did is I took some of this Vallejo acrylic putty and put it in, let it sit for an hour or so, and I was able to sand it, and hopefully the majority of all that line is going to be gone. So that should have taken care of that pretty nice. And then last but not least, we've got 12 bolts added to these leg shields, which is going to look pretty cool. And I even left, well, 12 times 4, I left one blank, so there's a hole there, just something different. So that's an update on where we're at, and we're about ready to start adding legs onto a bottom hull, because I think that's about the next step. And these are going to go on something like this. And again, that pad will go on, but we're going to wait on adding that pad so we can weather everything. Okay, I think I've got assembly finished. We are ready for paint. And I think I have decided to go with the box art. I am going to try to replicate close to those three colors and try the speckle everywhere. Since this is more sci-fi, you can't go wrong, so that's what I'm going to try. And to do that, I'm going to start off with the black and white technique. I'll paint the whole entire thing the NATO black and then run the highlights with the white on the parts that would be sun faded, kind of on the top. Those parts will get painted white over the black. And then once those two colors are done, I will go with the Hall red over the whole entire thing, and then probably follow up with a little khaki here and there, like what's on there. And then I will probably darken my blue just a little bit to get close to that blue. We won't do exactly what's on the box, but we'll do something close. So let's get painting this thing. Okay, we've got all our colors done, and what I'm going to try to do next is replicate all these little dots or little lines around with the khaki to my XF49 that we had sprayed. And to do that, what I did is I took a toothpick and I sharpened one end to a needle point and then sharpened the other end to a needle point and then kind of blunted off the end by sanding it just a little bit. So I have two different points to put lines on, and we're going to see if that works out. I'm not even sure if it will or not. So I'll try to get some paint loaded up on the toothpick, but you don't want too much. And that may work out. It's very tiny. It's going to take a long time to put all these dots on, but I think it's going to be worth it. But it's super tiny because, again, this is a 72nd scale. So we really can't use a paintbrush. They'd be too big. And even blunting off that end just a little bit might be too big. We'll find out. Oh, that'll work. So we're going to dot this whole entire thing. Okay, we've got all our dot technique done. After about 1,000,000 dots. Of course, I got the decals on. That's all the decals are on this kit. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take a few of my favorite pigment colors, a natural sienna and light sienna, and I have a dark earth. and then I'll start mixing some colors. And then these two colors I picked up, here's a neat little tip. One's very dark, one's very light. It is a dark slate and a desert dust. I don't use these by themselves. What I use these for is if I'm mixing something up, a special mixture for the color I want, and if it gets to be too dark, I add a little bit of this in to lighten it up, and if I can't get it dark enough, I add a little bit of that in to darken it up. So that's the only reason I picked up a very dark and a very light color of pigment. And all pigment is, it's kind of like a little bit of a powder. That's all pigment is. So I'm going to start mixing up some pigment, try to get some color that I like, and I will start off with the inside of these leg shields. I'll get them all dusted up because they go on like that. You can't see much in there, but you'll be able to see a little bit. So if I can get that part in there dusted up and then attached on, it'll look pretty good. And that's where I'll start doing my first bit of weathering. Okay, I think I found the mixture I want, and what I did is I just used a little bit of that dark earth, a little bit of the light sienna, and a little bit of the natural sienna, even parts of all three, and mixed it up. And the way you apply this is you just kind of rub it in. It's kind of rubbed in. It's kind of like a chalk, actually, when you start doing it. And then to fix that so it'll stay is you take a little bit of white spirits. Any odorless white spirits will do. I like using this one. And I picked up this neat little dropper. And this dropper has a little needle on it. And you just kind of put a drop of the spirits in there, and it'll run around and grab it, and that'll end up setting up. It doesn't look like anything right now, but after it dries I'll show you what it looks like. And I'm going to do that on the other three legs. It's been not quite an hour, maybe 45 minutes, and the way that dries in there, it looks like you just put it in, but the white spirits will hold it all together. So I just wanted to show you that. And then we're going to go ahead and mount these onto the legs, and I've done the same with the legs. And it'll just go under like that. And we'll get these mounted up. Little update on the walking tank. Glass or clear parts does not come in the tank, so what I did on this piece here that's the headlight is after everything was painted, I scraped the paint off and took some ultra white glue, toothpick, and just dabbed it in and put a little dollop right there where what would now be the lens, and I'll let that dry pretty much overnight. It'll become crystal clear and look like a lens. I went through all my clear lenses and I don't have anything that small. It's very, very tiny. Another update on the walking tank. I got the exhaust finished up. It's looking pretty good. And what I used on the exhaust were these three colors right here. I like to start off with the dark one first, dark rust. Apply that, let it completely dry. Then the next color, which is medium rust. dab that on in various spots, let it dry, and then I come in last with the light rust, dab it on in a few spots, let it dry, and then when that's complete I re-dab a little bit of the dark on. Something this small doesn't need pigment powders because of the small scale. If I added powders to that, it would be way too small since it's 72nd scale. And then once that was done, I came in with some Tamiya soot, put it on a Q-tip, and did some rubbing on where the exhaust would be flowing out. And that's the exhaust on that. Well, almost done. I've got one step left to do, and that's flip it over and put the turret on. But I wanted to show you guys the underneath of this thing. Alright, now it's officially done. A couple of the extras I did. Of course, I added the light piece there for the glue. That back piece there on the turret I added, that was completely open. And there's a couple of nuts and bolts I added on the front of the turret. Those two right there, just to give it a little bit more detail. And like I said a minute ago, what I'm going to do is put this on some sort of diorama base, a sand base or a dirt base or something, and I'll do a video on that, so look for a video on that. That'll be coming up here in the near future. If you like this series, subscribe and like this video. We got a lot of more cool things coming up on Throttle Power.